You sent me in there. You knew. And you let me walk in alone.
What the CEO did not know, what none of them knew, sitting in their 43rd floor silence with Seoul burning gold below them, was that she had heard this before. In Accra, in London, in a glass-walled conference room in Singapore, and every single time she had done the same thing. Swallowed it, straightened her back, and decided that being excellent would eventually be enough, and she was so tired, so specifically and completely tired, of being wrong about that. The laughter came, soft, collective, the sound of a table full of people choosing the path of least resistance, and she let it pass over her the way she had learned to let things pass, which was by becoming briefly, internally, somewhere else entirely. 8 years of this. 8 years of the best work in the room and the most unremarkable chair. She was still composing her face into something that would cost her nothing when she became aware, in the peripheral way you become aware of a change in air pressure, that the man at the far end of the table had not laughed, had instead set his glass down with the slow deliberateness of someone clearing space, and was now looking at the CEO the way you look at a problem you have just decided to solve. She had learned the hard way that looking at something was the same as admitting it existed, and she wasn't doing that yet. Park Jae-won was still speaking. He said methodology the way someone says a word they learned recently and want you to know they learned it. And she heard the seam in it and said nothing. The table listened with the specific attentiveness of people who had already decided the conclusion and were waiting politely for the evidence to finish. She had checked the numbers so many times they had stopped feeling like numbers and started feeling like the truth, which they were, and which would not, she already knew, be the point. The man at the far end of the table said something. In Korean. Quietly. Not loudly enough that she caught the whole of it, but with the tone of a man making a correction he will not be making twice. She did not have enough Korean for the words, she had enough for the room's response to them. The CEO's expression did the specific thing that expressions do when someone has said the true thing in the wrong register, and the laughter stopped, and the table found somewhere else to look, and there was a silence of approximately 4 seconds that had the quality of a much longer silence compressed. She kept her eyes on the CEO. His hands were somewhere at the edge of her vision doing what hands do when someone is listening. The glass set down with that slow, preparatory care, the way you set a glass down when you are about to need both hands free, though nothing had happened yet and no one had moved. The detail arrived in the peripheral edge of her attention and stayed there, without a category. She had been carrying things without names for so long she had stopped noticing the weight. The dinner continued. Abena was, in the way she had learned to be, somewhere else entirely. She found the card in her hand in the lobby, not found it, became aware of it. There was a distinction, and she stood in the lobby's expensive light and made herself examine it, because the distinction mattered, and because she had 8 years of practice at not letting the mattering show. The card was cream-colored, high-weight stock, a name in both Korean and English. Kwon Do-hyun. No organization, no title. No indication of why a man with no organizational affiliation would be at a consortium dinner with 3 of the largest capital groups in Northeast Asia. On the back, 2 words in Korean, handwritten in something that was not quite a hurry and not quite deliberate. She looked at the card for a moment. A man trying to scare her would have made eye contact when he put it in her hand. So it wasn't that. She filed it under not that and kept walking. Outside, Seoul at night always looked like the interesting thing was happening just around the corner from wherever you were standing, and tonight she thought it probably was. She got into the car. She had the report to review. She had 3 conference calls before 7 in the morning. She had enough to occupy both hands and all available cognitive function until the flight to Tokyo the day after next, which meant there was no reason at all that she should still be thinking about the weight of someone else's silence at a table full of noise. She got to the hotel still carrying it, went to sleep carrying it, woke up, and it was the first thing there. She had the card translated in the morning, in Bukchon, on a bench that had the specific quality of somewhere very old, being very quiet. The palace walls above her, the lane stones beneath her, Seoul at a distance doing its usual business. She held the phone so the camera could read the Korean characters and waited, and then read the translation twice. Already watching. Already watching. She read it twice, put her phone in her bag and told herself she was not going to think about it on the walk back, which meant she thought about nothing else. She took a longer route back to the hotel. She was not examining why. The brief landed in her inbox around 7 and she took her reading glasses and her coffee to the business center because 74 pages needed a proper table, not a hotel bed. She read all 74, On page 41, in a subsection describing existing due diligence activities, there was a reference to a pre-existing surveillance operation covering the same target entities her audit had been contracted to review. The reference was 2 sentences. It cited no operator. It had the specific quality of a sentence that had been written carefully enough to disclose without disclosing anything that could not be subsequently denied. She marked it in the margin with a small, precise asterisk, made a note to follow up in session. On page 41, she also noticed, in a photograph from a consortium workshop 6 months prior in a different city, the consortium liaison who would be present tomorrow. A woman in her 40s, black suit, touching her left wrist in the specific repeated way of someone managing an anxiety they have decided not to acknowledge. The detail settled somewhere in Abena's attention without being asked to. She held it alongside the asterisk and the card and the silence at the dinner table, uncategorized, the way you hold things that have not yet told you what they are. She had a lot of things to carry. She was, as established, excellent at it. The Tokyo session was on the 14th floor of a building that had the architecture of a place designed to communicate that the decisions made inside it were above the level of weather. Abena was seated 2/3 down the table from the head, which was about where she had expected to be seated. The consortium brief had listed her as the primary analyst for the O Capital review. The table's arrangement listed her as someone who had been asked to attend. She had the derivative exposure figures memorized. She had run them against 3 separate models, and the models had agreed with each other, which was not the same as the models being right, but was usually close enough. She listened with her face completely still, the way she had trained herself to listen to questions that were really just statements dressed up in a question mark, before she said, "The derivative exposure you're describing assumes the underlying instrument maturities are standardized across the 3-tier structure. They aren't." The room did what rooms do when the answer to the question everyone has been talking around arrives without an introduction. 3 people went still. She noted all 3 of them. Not dramatically, just registered, the way you register the things that matter. The man to her left was one of them, Kwon Do-hyun. She had not known he would be here. The stillness lasted the length of a breath, and then he was looking at the page in front of him, and the page was blank, and the pen in his hand had not been used. She answered the follow-up questions. One consortium member asked a clarifying question that did not clarify anything and addressed none of her actual points, and she listened with her face completely still, the way she had trained herself to listen to questions that were really just statements dressed up in a question mark. He said thank you when he finished. She said of course. The session continued. She did not look again at the end of the table, though she was aware, in the specific peripheral way she had been aware of him since the dinner, that he had not moved. After the session, she gathered her materials. The liaison in the black suit was speaking quietly with Do-hyun near the door. Something in the woman's posture had the quality of a warning delivered too quickly, and her left wrist was receiving the same treatment it had in the photograph. Abena was 3 steps from the door when she noticed it. Kept moving. The brief had an asterisk on page 41. She was going to ask about it. She was going to ask about a lot of things. The room had already moved on by the time she got to the lobby. That was fine. She had too. She stood in the elevator bank and watched the numbers descend and felt the specific stillness of someone who had run the same calculation for the 4th time today and arrived at the same answer, which was that she did not have enough information yet, and that not having enough information was not the same as not knowing something was wrong. She went back to the hotel. The brief had an asterisk on page 41, and she was going to follow it up in the morning. That was the plan. She had a plan. That was something. She asked about it in the morning, and the session confirmed what the asterisk had been pointing at for 23 hours. The 72-hour regulatory deadline was printed at the top of the consortium's procedural summary in the specific font of something that had always been there and had not been important until this exact moment. She wrote the number down in the margin of her notes. 72 hours from the close of the Tokyo session. She looked at the time on her phone, began subtracting. She went back to her room at 7:30. She was still subtracting. The corridor on her floor was the standard temperature of all hotel corridors in buildings like this one, which is to say it was slightly too cold, the kind of cold that the building's systems produce when they are optimized for something other than the comfort of the people in it. She already had her key card out before she reached the door. She always did. It was faster. She was almost at her door when she registered that the angle was wrong. Her laptop was on the table. She had left it at a specific angle. She always left it at a specific angle. The same angle. It was not a thing she had thought about consciously until this exact moment when she registered that the angle was different. She put her bag down just inside the door, stood there for a second, then walked to the table and opened the laptop. The analysis files were undisturbed. She checked 3 of them, all precisely as she had left them. She checked the correspondence folder. It had been opened. Not the analysis, not the financial models. The folder where she kept the emails she was not sure she should delete yet. Her father's check-ins from the week before she flew. Her friend Yemi's messages with the logistics of staying in contact across time zones. The specific small archive of a woman who had learned to document her personal life the way she documented everything else, with care, so that later she could demonstrate that she had existed correctly. They had not been interested in the work she had come here to do. They had been interested in who she called when she was afraid. She closed the laptop. She looked at the wall for a second. Then she said to the empty room, in the particular tone of someone who has decided to register the situation without giving it the volume it was probably hoping for, "Lovely Wi-Fi in this building." She sat down. She made a list. What had been accessed, what they could have taken from it, what that told her about what they already knew and what they were still building toward. The list was not dramatic. It was the kind of list you make when the ground has moved under you and you need to document exactly where you are standing now in case you need to prove it later. The knock on her door was quiet. The kind of knock that was not a knock at all, really. More the specific presence of someone outside a door who had decided to wait rather than insist. She already knew before she opened it that it would not be hotel staff. His collar was still turned up and the cold from outside was still sitting in the fabric of it, the deep kind that doesn't leave just because you've come indoors, and something in his hand, a ceramic cup, the kind with a specific weight to it, still warm enough that she could feel the heat from where she was standing. Baek Sung-tae was at the far end of the corridor, doing something that required his complete attention in the opposite direction. His commitment to that direction was, she noted, genuinely impressive. She held the cup in both hands and the warmth came through slowly, starting at the center of her palms, moving out the way heat does when your hands have been cold, long enough they'd stopped expecting anything different. She stood in the doorway with it and did not say anything about the angle of the laptop. "The corridor's cold," she said. He said something about the building's heating system. She said something that was technically about the building's heating system. Neither of them said anything about the folder or the list she had just made, or the specific fact that he had come from outside at 7:30 in the evening with a cup that was exactly the right temperature. "Thank you," she said, in the tone of someone ending a conversation that both of them knew was not actually ending. He let her end it. She noted this afterward, in the specific quiet of a woman reorganizing what she understood about a situation. He let her end it. He did not push past the professional framing she had built around the exchange. He simply stood in the corridor for a moment longer and then was no longer there, and Baek Sung-tae was also no longer there, and she was alone with a warm cup in a cold room and the specific knowledge that she had not asked how he knew to come, and that not asking was the most honest sentence of the evening. She had a flight in the morning. That was the next concrete thing, and she held onto it like a railing. The ticket had been purchased at 11 the previous night. She had not told anyone. She stood in the transit zone with the boarding card in her hand, paper, printed, the specific physicality of a decision made concrete, and watched the departures board cycle through its updates. Accra via Dubai, boarding in 40 minutes. 8 years, the derivative question, the asterisk on page 41, the corridor, and the cup, and the impossible angle of a laptop she should not have needed to check. She had done this before, in versions. She had stayed in all the previous versions. She had decided that excellent and present was better than excellent and absent. The calculation had always resolved the same way. Stay, straighten the back, decide that being right would eventually be enough. She was standing in an airport. She had not moved toward the gate. Dr. Darko. His voice arrived from behind her, at the specific distance of someone who had timed the approach and was leaving her an exit if she needed one. She had the ticket in her hand. The board was cycling. In 40 minutes the gate would close. She did not turn around. She didn't catch all of it over the noise of the terminal, but she caught enough. The sound of a man who had just said the truest thing he had available and gone quiet to see what she would do with it. Her hand held the boarding card. The board cycled. Seoul to Accra via Dubai, boarding in 38 minutes. Her hand held the boarding card and she did not move toward the gate. They were at altitude before either of them said anything that was not logistical. She had the window seat. This was not an accident. She had mentioned once in a meeting that she preferred windows on long flights, and the preference had arrived in her boarding assignment the way things arrived in this operation, which was before she had a word for the mechanism. She held this alongside the cup and the corridor and let the holding be what it was. Below them, the lights of Seoul resolved into the dark of the strait and then the dark of the sea, and Do-hyun was reading something on his phone, and his men were variously occupied with the particular focused inattention of people who have been told not to be present. And Baek Sung-tae was in the rear of the plane looking at something with total commitment that had nothing to do with anything happening near the front. The meal came, and she looked at the dish the way you look at airplane food, noting what it was, deciding what she thought about it, not having particularly strong feelings either way. "No thank you," she said. The attendant registered this and moved to begin removing the tray. "Thank you," Abena said. The attendant stopped, uncertain. "No, really thank you, I appreciate it." Do-hyun had looked up from his phone. He was watching the exchange with the expression of someone who has encountered a conversational pattern they do not have a framework for. The attendant, increasingly uncertain, began to move away again. "I'm sorry," Abena said. "It does look excellent." She gestured at the dish. "Thank you, truly." The attendant set the tray back down and retreated with the specific relief of someone who has decided the resolution they have reached is probably fine. Do-hyun looked at Abena. "You are going to eat it," he said. "I might eat it," she said. "You said thank you 3 times. That's the polite number." He was quiet for a moment. Then, 3. The first no is courtesy, the second no is confirmation, the third, she considered. The third is information. She looked at the dish. "If you stop offering after the first no, that's actually considered rude where I'm from." Baek Sung-tae, from the rear of the plane, had developed the expression of a man who was going to be thinking about this for the rest of the year. Do-hyun's expression had done the specific thing it did when she said something that cost him approximately 4 seconds of his composure. He recovered with the efficiency of a man who had been practicing composure professionally for longer than she had been running financial audits. She ate the dish. It was, in fact, excellent. The lights in the cabin dimmed. Seoul was a long way back. The clock was somewhere inside 60 hours, and the sound of the engines was the specific white noise of a transit world that existed between things and therefore, technically, was its own thing. She was aware of him the way she had been aware of him since the dinner, peripherally, precisely, with the specific heightened attention of someone who had decided she was not paying attention. They were close. The seat configuration was what it was, and the cabin lights were low, and she had been awake for a long time. She was thinking about the asymmetry and the derivative exposure model, and then she was thinking about the correspondence folder, and then she was not thinking about either of those things. He was looking at something out the window, or the reflection of something, and his shoulder was near enough to her shoulder that the distance between them was mostly decision rather than geometry. Her own consciousness, running its usual commentary, noted the distance, noted the decision, and did neither of them the courtesy of a category. "What was the number?" she said. He turned. "Which number?" "The missed call, at the palace grounds." She had been carrying this for 3 days and she was tired of the weight of it. "You recognized it, on my phone. You knew what it was." He looked at her for 3 seconds. The 3 seconds had the specific quality of a man running several calculations simultaneously and deciding, consciously, what answer he was going to give. She watched him decide. She had watched enough people decide things under pressure to recognize the texture of it. Then he said, "It's not a number you need to know right now." She looked at him. He looked back. He did not explain what right now implied about later, and she did not ask. And the cabin was quiet except for the engines, and they stayed at that proximity for another 11 seconds exactly before she looked back at the window, and he looked back at whatever he had been looking at, and neither of them said anything, and the distance between them went back to being mostly decision rather than geometry, and the decision was harder to maintain than it had been 11 seconds ago. His secondary phone lit up. He read the message. Whatever it said changed the quality of the next hour. She could see it in the way he set the phone down. Slowly, with the specific care of someone making sure their hands were free. She looked at the window. The lights below them were different now. Hong Kong was an hour away. The clock was at something south of 60 hours, and the night had changed its texture, and the 3 refusal dish was the last uncomplicated thing that had happened. Hong Kong was the kind of city that had seen too much to react to any of it anymore. The suite was on an upper floor. He told her what the trap looked like from both sides. He said it clearly, the way you say things you would prefer not to have to say, with the specific efficiency of someone who has decided that clarity is more important than comfort, which usually means comfort has already been used up. Withdraw the report. She was safe. Submit it. The fabricated evidence trail built around Do Hyun activated. Every institutional record from the last 14 months assembled into a document that implicated him in exactly the network he had spent 4 years surveilling. The legal construction of it was precise. She recognized the precision because financial forensics was, among other things, the study of how precision is deployed to construct false narratives, and this one had been built by someone who understood the architecture. Every exit, she said, costs something, he said. Yes. She looked at her hands. She was not moving them. She was thinking about the women who had held this kind of stillness before her, in rooms with different furniture, different pressures, the same fundamental geometry of a trap designed to use the people you care about as the mechanism. She was thinking about what those women had done. What am I to you? She said. Operationally, be specific. He was specific. He said, you are the only person alive who has both the access and the forensic architecture to make the file admissible in a regulatory proceeding. Without your corroboration, the document is circumstantial. With it, it holds. That is your operational value to this situation. The honest answer was worse than any lie. She knew this was true because a lie would have been designed to make her feel better, which meant it would have had a recognizable shape, and this had no shape at all. It was just the structural truth of a situation, and it sat in the room with them like a piece of furniture that had always been there. She wasn't going to explain herself. Not here, not to him, not after he had just told her exactly what she was worth to this situation in the flattest possible terms. She took the information in and she reorganized around it the way she had always reorganized around things, precisely, quietly, without visible seam. What she noticed, in the part of her that noticed things regardless of instruction, was that he had answered honestly. What she noticed about the honest answer was that it did not include the sentence she would have needed to hear to stop organizing around it, and that the shape of the missing sentence told her something about why it was missing, and that she was going to be carrying that shape for a while. She picked everything up and kept moving because that was the thing she knew how to do. Jun Seo was in the lower corridor with the specific ease of someone performing ease at approximately 93% effectiveness. The 7% gap was in his shoulders. Do Hyun saw it. Abena saw Do Hyun see it, and held that too. Jun Seo was briefing them on the next sequence: logistics, contact protocols, the operational shape of the Singapore session. He mentioned a neighborhood in Accra. Said he had grown up near it, said it like it was nothing, just a small thing to make the conversation feel personal. She smiled because it was a nice thing to say. There was a beat of approximately 1 second where this was mildly charming. Then the beat ended, and what remained was, Jun Seo had done his homework specifically on Accra and the specific neighborhood, and he had done it recently enough that it arrived as conversational color rather than research, and the corridor had a quality now that it had not had a minute ago. She watched Do Hyun not react to any of this. She had been watching Do Hyun not react to things for 3 days. She was becoming very good at reading what he was choosing not to react to. He confirmed Jun Seo's status quietly, in the flat tone of someone delivering information that had been processed some time before now, and Jun Seo understood what the confirmation meant, and Abena understood what it meant about Jun Seo, and what it meant about all of them. That the operational landscape had been more compromised than she had understood, and that Do Hyun had known, and that knowing had been a management decision rather than a disclosure. She was carrying a lot. She kept moving through the lobby, which was just a lobby. Marble floor, cold air, the hush of a building that charged too much for the rooms to let anything feel casual. A man in an expensive gray suit did not approach them. He was very good at not approaching them. He had positioned himself at the precise angle where not approaching had the full communicative weight of a meeting. Do Hyun saw him first. He said 2 words to her in Korean she did not know, and she gathered the meaning from the quality of how he said them. She turned her head and found the man in the gray suit not looking at them with total commitment, and understood this was a demonstration, not a threat. A demonstration that demonstrated what the threat would look like if they needed it. He knows where we are, she said. He has always known where we are, Do Hyun said. This is him deciding we should know he knows. She thought about the corridor on her floor in the Tokyo hotel, and the angle of the laptop, and the correspondence folder, and the specific items in it, who she called when she was afraid. They had been in her room before she understood she had anything they wanted. Then there's no room, she said. Not a question. There is no room, he said. Not an answer. Just the confirmation of something she had already organized around. The man in the gray suit left. The lobby continued doing what lobbies did. She thought, very briefly, about Accra and London and Singapore and all the rooms she had entered with the conviction that excellent and present was the correct strategy, and how the strategy had never once produced the result it promised. She thought about the 72-hour clock. She thought about the folder. She said nothing else, and they moved towards Singapore, and the clock subtracted, and the antagonist force was already there ahead of them because the antagonist force was always already there. Wearing a suit, traveling business class with keys to every room. The presentation room in Singapore had her on her feet before she could finish the thought. She knew this room, not this building, this room, the configuration of it. The way the light came in from the specific angle that suggested the windows faced northeast, the proportion of the conference table to the presentation wall. She had been in this room before, in a different city, under a different consortium banner, 14 months ago. Different country, same room, not coincidence, design. She sat back down. She made her face do nothing. She listened to the rest of the session with the particular focused attentiveness of someone cataloging in real time. And when the session broke, she did not mention the room to anyone, and she noticed that Do-hyun had watched her face do nothing, and had noticed the doing nothing, and had said nothing about that either. They moved to a private room, same building. He opened the folder. Not all the way. He showed her enough. The surveillance operation, the file, the 4-year architecture of it, her name in the operational notes as the necessary corroboration. She listened. She understood the operational logic perfectly. The file needed someone with her specific forensic access to the documents. Without her, the file was circumstantial. With her, it held. And the rest, she said. He closed the folder. The way he closed it told her the rest existed. The rest is for later, he said. She told him she had recognized the room. He looked at her for a moment. Not the 3-second look from the plane, a different kind, the kind that arrives when someone has given you information they were not required to give. He did not explain how the room had followed her across cities. The non-explanation was its own information. She closed the folder and pushed it slightly toward the middle of the table. The professional part of the meeting was done. He received this with the stillness of someone who has just heard 2 different things said in the same sentence and is deciding which one deserves an answer, and she could see it. Whatever distance he had built and maintained was not, it turned out, something he had managed to build between himself and her. My operational role is clear, she said. I'll proceed accordingly. He went very still for a moment in the way of someone who has just heard 2 different things said in the same sentence and is deciding which one deserves an answer. His pen was in his hand. He had not used it. He set it down. There is something in the folder, he said slowly, that I have not shown you yet. I will show you when the timing is less. He stopped, reconsidered. When the timing is less likely to cost you something you need right now. She held this. The folder was in his hand, and the folder had a remainder, and the remainder had a shape, and she was going to find out the shape eventually, and until then, she was going to proceed accordingly, professionally, with the specific efficiency of a woman who had decided 8 years ago that this was the correct mode of operation, and who was becoming aware, at increasing speed, that the decision had been made under different conditions than the current ones. Yemi's name on the screen at 11:20, and she felt something in her shoulders let go slightly, the specific way your body relaxes when something familiar shows up in the middle of something that has been nothing but unfamiliar for days. The corridor. She had stepped outside the hotel entrance for air, the specific air of a city that had processed a lot of things and was making none of them available at this hour. The phone lit up with Yemi's name, and she felt the warmth of it, the specific relief of a familiar person, and answered. "You're still awake," Yemi said, in the voice of someone who knew her schedule better than most. "Always," Abena said. "What time is it for you?" They talked for maybe 40 seconds, the normal 40 seconds of 2 people who have known each other long enough that the first part of every call is inventory. Who is where? How is the work? How is the body holding up under the particular demands of doing difficult things in foreign cities? Abena was looking at the lights of Singapore and thinking about the folder with the remainder in it and the room that had followed her from a different country. Then Yemi said, "There's something I have to tell you." The quality of that sentence. She had heard it before, in different registers, from different people, and she had learned over time that the something always had the same shape. It was something the other person had known for longer than the conversation suggested, and the decision to say it had been made before the phone rang. "Okay," Abena said. The word was very steady. She listened. She stood in the Singapore air with the phone against her ear, and she listened to Yemi explain, in the specific careful tone of someone who has rehearsed this and found that rehearsal does not actually help, that she had been approached 18 months ago, that the approach had come 3 months before the Lagos consortium invitation, that the invitation had not been coincidence, that the entire professional pathway that had led Abena from Lagos to Seoul to Tokyo to Hong Kong to this specific street corner in Singapore had been seeded before she had understood herself to be choosing any of it. 18 months before Lagos, everything she had believed she had chosen. Abena looked at the lights of Singapore. She thought about the corridor in Tokyo and the cup that had been there before she called anyone. She thought about 9 months ago, a consortium briefing, someone challenging Yemi's data quality, and Abena citing 3 specific papers saying, "This analyst's work is foundational to this methodology," and the challenge dropping, and Yemi thanking her afterward in the way of someone who meant it. The memory came, and she let it go through her without grabbing onto it because she knew if she held it, she would not be able to finish what she was doing, and she needed to finish what she was doing. "Thank you for telling me," she said. The precision of it, the specific care of a woman who will not explain herself to a room that has already decided what she is, which was what this was. The room had decided 18 months ago, and Yemi had been the room's instrument, and Abena had been the subject, and knowing this did not require a response the room had not already factored in. She ended the call. She became aware, immediately, that someone was standing behind her. Do Hyun was behind her. She had not heard him come out. She looked at his face and she could see that he had known, not the call perhaps, not the specific moment, but the shape of what she had just learned, and that he had let her learn it from Yemi instead of from him. She looked at him for a moment. "Did you know," she said, "that the operation was running before Lagos?" He answered. The answer confirmed it. She knew she should feel more than she did, and the gap between what she should feel and what she actually felt was its own kind of information she was going to have to sit with later. She let him see, briefly, past the part of her that had spent 8 years deciding that being excellent was the correct substitute for being protected. Just briefly, 1 inch. She let him see it, and she looked at him looking at it, and she thought, this is what this costs. The professional independence she had built piece by piece. Wanting this was what it cost. "My professional judgment," she said with the precision she had left, "has been compromised by operational proximity. I want to note that for the record." He looked at her, and then looked away, and she understood. He had heard both versions, and he was giving her back the one she could keep in public. She was not grateful enough. She knew this. She told herself it was enough, and it was not, and she was going to be carrying the shape of why it was not for longer than this night. The clock subtracted. Singapore was cold in the specific way of cities that process a lot without registering it. Then Do Hyun's phone lit up, the secondary one, the one she had seen once before, on the plane, the one that had changed the color of an entire night over the strait. He looked at the screen. His face did the specific thing it did when new information required real processing. Not the professional arrangement, the other kind, the kind that arrived before the arrangement came down over it. He showed her the screen without a word. 1 number, no name, no context. A single message, 3 characters, nothing else. She read it. She looked up at him. "You told me," she said slowly. "That number belonged to someone inside Oh Sung-jae's network." "It does," he said. "Then why," she said, "does it show a location that places them inside this building, right now?" He was already moving. "If you felt that, you were supposed to. Sit with it for a moment. Don't move past it too fast. What Yemi just did, what that last sentence just changed, you felt that because it was real, and it was designed to land exactly where it landed. If you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to understand exactly how this kind of story feels from the inside. Comment what you are carrying right now. I want to know. Part 2 is already here, and it begins exactly in the wound that sentence just opened.